But the Ecamm fam. Ecamm fam is the name of the sham. This is a jam. But the Ecamm fam. Ecamm fam is the name of the sham. This is a jam. But the Ecamm fam. This is a jam. But the Ecamm fam. It's a jam, but the Ecamm fam. Ecamm fam is the name of the sham.
Hold it, stop the music!
Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen!
Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen.
Can I please have your attention?
Now showtime, are you ready? Are you ready for start time?
Let's find out. Ready, let's go.
Happy Friday, everyone.
What's up, everyone?
Howdy.
We are having way too much fun behind the scenes. We were joking behind the countdown timer that we don't normally do this. We normally make Doc do this, but hey, we're taking over today. So hopefully you'll have some fun with us. We are outside of our comfort zone. So ask the good questions, but like not the really, really hard questions, because Doc's not here to help us with those ones.
Yeah, if you ask the question and Luis and I do this,
that I'm back in charge. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome Paul and Luis for hanging out with me. If you don't know who we are normally the behind the scenes crew here at Ecamm. Paul is our moderator extraordinaire. Luis is our producer of our regular podcast, The Flow. And I pop up here and there, but I'm not normally the tech person. But we're hanging out with you today to answer all of your questions and to take you through Ecamm. Luis has wiped his Ecamm clean, so we are building from scratch, and hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions that you have along the way or show you some fun features. Take you through everything. What am I missing?
Well, no, like one of the things that I wanted to mention was one of the things that we faced starting from scratch today, which was as soon as I actually brought Paul and Katie onto my, Ecamm link, they were only seeing my face, and I'm over here adjusting the scenes and trying to make everything look good.
Luis is like, and what does it look like?
He's like, what does it look like? You guys are liking the framing? And they're like, I only see you, which is one of our common issues that we get a lot, which is making sure that in the settings, in the, interview tab, that you have the actual broadcast to be displayed to your guest, comparative to them just seeing you as an individual, by yourself. So that is a a double-edged sword. So it really depends on how you want it or how your guest prefers it, depending on whether they want to just see you to make it a personal or an intimate conversation, or do they want to see the actual broadcast themselves and everything that's going out live.
Yeah, we're selfish. We want to see all the stuff. We want to see ourselves. We want to see everything. Well,
we always talk about it too, that we think it's better because we get to see each other's faces and see the expression. So you get to see the head nods and the agreement, or when somebody's like totally, what is it? The side heading it, like when they turn their head, like, what was that you were saying? Because that sense of confusion just, gets all over them. So you'll be able to see both.
I just have to remember. which way to turn because I have to turn opposite to look at.
I know. That's why I'm in the middle. I make the rest of make you two work. Well, hey, we have our first question. Junior wants to know, how do you set up Ecamm for two-person interview to get the best results? So why don't we, Luis, will you take us into live demo mode and we will show everyone what Ecamm looks like?
Absolutely. All right. So live demo mode here. Boom. Now you're seeing exactly what I'm seeing as far as the interview mode goes. And
Yeah.
it really depends. So we're just going to wing it here and we're going to make a whole new scene, right? And we're just going to hit this little plus arrow to create a
Mhm.
new scene and automatically I get put on there. But let's say I'm producing and today the interview is between Katie and Paul. Well, all I'm going to do is actually switch to Katie as the main guest. So now she's on there. And then right here, I'm just going to add Paul with this plus sign. And he
Yeah.
gets added right next to her. And that's it. I can
And that
sit here in the background without being, none the wiser. And that's how easily or how simple you can do an interview, whether it's for yourself or producing it.
Yeah, and this is and please definitely follow up with us on your specific question because it sounds like you've been testing it out and running into some issues. So let us know what those issues are so we can help. But this feature for anyone that's brand new and is no idea what we're talking about, Ecamm has built in with it the ability for our pro level users to be able to bring on up to 10 interview guests. So you can be as crazy and as busy with your panels and your interviews as you want to be. But basically, you just send out within the Ecamm tool, it generates a link. You click the link, it copies it, and you send it out to someone, and they come on, from hopefully from their computer, but they could also come on from a tablet or their phone. They can be PC or Mac. They do not have to have Ecamm. It's all browser based, so it's really similar to what you'd see with like a Zoom or any kind of video conferencing, or most of the live streaming tools have that as a feature. Val's
And
loving your remote producing. Luis very confidently was like, and I'll be behind the scenes again as I show you how this works.
And one of the things I'll add on to the whole interviewing process, if you're interviewing people, one thing that you really want to make sure that you do is you want to find somebody that you can come on, even as a guest, just to
Yeah.
test it out, so that
Oh
you
yeah.
see what it looks like. You can even actually join from a browser as a guest, but see what it looks like, what the person feels. But if you find somebody else to come on with just to test, you can
Yeah.
troubleshoot, see what they're going to hear, what they're going to go through. You understand the challenges so that you can help them when when they come on your show. Because it's kind
Yeah.
of like, as Doc always says, it's kind of like a waiter never tasting the food in a restaurant and then having to sell it. It's like you
Yeah.
need to understand what the other side looks like.
It'll give you that confidence too, and chances are it's also going to help you realize a couple of things that you just never would have thought about. Like this morning, where where Luis was like, "Oh, hang on, I started a brand new version of Ecamm, and I don't have the right view, right, for my guests to have the
Yep.
best experience." So yeah, testing it out is great. You can do that in the Ecamm community. So if you go ecamm.tv/community, that'll toss you into our community. You're welcome to join, even if you're not yet a customer. You're still welcome to hang out with us and
Yep.
do some testing and ask to be a guest or ask if people want to jump on and join. As far as specific browser, these are great questions. Keep them coming. As far as specific browsers go, it is best on Chrome. Firefox works well as well. The other browsers tend to not work quite as well. I never remember where we're at with Safari. Yes on Safari, friends, or no on Safari? Others may be able to tell me. I always use Chrome, so I would say if you're comfortable doing that, use Chrome. But
Yeah,
yeah,
sometimes Safari works, but they'll come out with a security change or something, and then it breaks it again. So
yeah.
I wouldn't
All
know
right.
because migrating from Windows, I am so into the Googleverse. So, Apple Sheep and Googleverse unite.
uh, I think there's a person in chat that needs to be put on timeout.
Hang
I
on.
just
We're
saw
not
him.
doing any. I thought you weren't working today, Doc. You need to get offline. We're not taking that question. Let's for Junia's sake and really for everyone else, since we're in kind of this interview mode phase. So Louis showed you how easy it is to kind of bring on and just do a really simple side side screen split screen split view. And look, we're three up right now in a screen split view. But why don't we show some of the camera settings that you can do for your guests? So I'm joining as a guest right now. Paul's joining as a guest. Luis is driving the show. So Luis, if I came on and let me turn my light out. So now my lighting is garbage, Luis. Do you do you think that you could brighten up my shot? Can we mess around with
Yeah.
some zooming in and
Well,
out and maybe some camera settings?
absolutely. What I'm going to do right off the bat is we can see we have some missing boxes here.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like to do is hit the little 3-dot menu and just remove from the switcher, even if it is temporarily, just to clean things up. So the ones that I'm not using, I'm going to
Yeah, this is
remove.
the
So
camera
now we
switcher.
only
Yep.
have what we're utilizing. Now that
Yep.
we have the 3 shots, let's say Katie doesn't have the best lighting, we're going to hit this little magic wand over her individual box here in the camera switcher, and it's going to bring up the camera effects. The camera effects window is going to give you a lot of options, including the zoom and pan, which allows you to adjust their size. Oh, I
Oh, we're
locked the
locked.
scene. So let's unlock that. That's another tip for another day, but always lock your scenes. That's completely separate. But once you're trying to adjust it, right here you can just click on the zoom and pan, and
Mhm.
you're able to adjust the size and then even move it. So if they're not completely centered, you could actually center them within the frame. But we're also talking about the lighting. So just underneath the picture, we have the picture settings, which is where we could adjust brightness, gamma, saturation, tint, and temperature, which all have to do with the color spectrum and how the image looks. So now this is going to give you the ability to take the gamma, and even though it sounds counterintuitive, the less gamma, the brighter you're going to get. And you have a little indicator here. So you have a white dot and a black dot, basically showing you which level or which side of the spectrum you want to go to. So you could add a little gamma that's going to brighten up the image, and then also increase some brightness to adjust that image. And that is how easily. Okay, so we have an error. That could be that my computer's full of
Yeah, full
podcasts
recordings.
and stuff like that. So recording all of this, I think I'm maxing out. So
We're still live, so I think we're still okay. Let
Yep.
us
so
know,
we'll
everyone.
roll on. I'll just have to
Yeah.
download it from YouTube if necessary. But
Mhm.
just like that, that's how easily I could adjust the brightness, but then also have the ability to color correct. So now I'm going to anti-color correct, or want to make it warmer, you understand,
Yeah.
or adjust it. But all of this could be done during your pre-show check-in. So
Yeah.
today, before we went live, I was taking care of all of these things behind the scenes in the 15 minutes that we had, chatting before we went live, and adjusting all of the scenes, the volume. All of these things could be done with Ecamm very easily. Even adding a black and white effect, which is what we did for the intro.
Or blurring, you could blur. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are a lot of cool effects. And again,
Yep.
so Luis is using the latest version of Ecamm, which is 4.0, 4.04, which we've been laughing about.
Yeah.
But version 4 or newer has this new camera switcher, which just makes it a lot easier to be able to leverage all the cameras. So everything that Luis just did for my camera, I'm gonna turn my light back on and screw everything up. Everything that Luis just did for my camera, he could certainly do for Paul's camera, for his own camera, for additional guests if he had multiple cameras. So you can control, obviously, you can control the hardware of any camera that's physically in front of you, but you can use these digital controls to control any of your cameras and then any of your guests. So it's just a really great way if you're bringing people on to give them a higher level of confidence. There's nothing worse than being like, oh, your camera quality doesn't look as good, and you're trying to think through what to do. You're making your guest feel uncomfortable. So the ability to be able to just, change those things and be like, you don't even worry about it. You don't even need to move. Like, I'll reposition you. I'll make sure all of our heads are the same size. We're at the same height. I'll make sure all those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm usually standing like this. So today I'm like squatting just to actually, keep my head in the profile. It's all the things that you do behind the scenes to make everything look unnoticeable.
Yeah, and it's all drag and drop. So the new camera switcher is a lot easier than the previous one was. Partially because it's larger, but also because, like Luis just showed you, you can very easily see all the camera controls on each of the cameras, including your guests, and you can drag and drop. So if Luis was to start a new scene, he could literally just drag one of those cameras over and be able to drop it into the scene, which is just a nice way to kind of set up and think about what the flow of your show is going to be. How many people are going to bring on? What do each of those, we call them scenes, but what do each of those kind of steps look like in the video that you're producing? You can plan all that out ahead of time so that when you get to your sound check or when you get to kind of your test run, everything is all set up and you could just hit next, next as you work your way through, whether it's a stream deck or anything else. It's a good way to do it. I'm looking through these questions here. Doc's still, pretending he's got a dentist appointment. I don't know. He's here. He's here in the chat. He's here in the
He's
chat.
like the little kid that calls into school or calls into work sick,
Yeah.
and then you find him out playing around in the city.
So true.
One
Oh
of
my
the things I
goodness.
wanted to also mention, going back to that era that we got,
Mhm.
yes, you can do ISO recordings of everything, but you have to keep in mind, Luis is doing this at 4K, and some of those files are going to be 4K. So the files are going to be large. So,
Mhm.
yes, you can make ISO recordings, but you also have to realize that you need disk space to
Mhm.
capture those recordings, or what we saw will happen. It will fail to record. It's not going to kill your stream, but it's going to kill the recordings that you thought you were going to be capturing. So,
Yeah, and that's a really good starting point for, maybe that's what, now that we've answered all of the interview questions, we should go back to the beginning and say, hey, this is what Ecamm looks like. So if you're brand new, it's a bunch of these different windows that each represent different features, and you can adjust any of these windows. Luis has got them like locked in beautiful, but you can move any of these around however you want to move them, and you can make any of the adjustments as you're first getting set up. But whether you are just starting for the first time, or you do this all the time, going up to the preferences, which is the Ecamm Live menu over. Nope, I'm always the wrong way. Nope. Yeah, nope. Nope. This way. At the top up here. The
Okay.
Ecamm Live menu will take you into the preferences. Is always good to just double check those, as I would say, more often than you even think, because there are lots and lots and lots of different things that these are controlling. And sometimes how you originally thought through or envision your show changes, or we've added a new feature or a new setting. And it's just a good idea to be aware of everything here. And so this is where those separate video files, if you're using that as a feature, this is where you would be able to set that and say, hey, where do I want my recordings to go? Do I want just my video recording, or do I want my video and audio recordings? Do I want all separate files or just one file? All of those settings are going to be found here, and there's lots of tabs. Just slowly work your way through and test and try too. So test something out, say like, oh, do I really want my interview window to chime? Turn that on. Do you want it to ring? And then, once you've done a couple of interviews and you're like, oh, that's annoying actually, because I have a call-in show and I don't want, I want people to be able to call in, but I don't want to hear that all the time. Go back in and turn it off. So it really is a little bit of a trial and error to figure out exactly. There's no way we could all give you our preferences, but they would probably all be different. What Luis likes and what Paul likes may not be what I use, may not be what Doc uses. So it's really a matter of going through and making sure that you have the settings that work best for what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah,
and I put
like
a link
auto
in.
answer guess is
Yeah.
a feature that I would be putting on there. Like I would have to pick up. So you were saying,
Yeah.
Paul?
And I dropped a link in the chat for the online user guide, and
Yep.
it takes you through each of the settings and preferences and what they mean. And the great thing to do is just go in and click each one, see what happens.
Yep.
Have fun. You can't break it.
Push all the buttons. You can't break it. And again, if you go to ecamm.tv/community, or ecamm.tv/discord. Those will take you into our community spaces. We have lots and lots and lots of incredibly friendly, super supportive Ecamm users at all levels. So it's totally a safe space to go in and say, hey, I want to bring an interview guest on and see what that looks like. Hey, I want to be an interview guest. Can someone, set up a stream here into the group and let me jump on and try something out? Or I don't actually know what this preference is, actually means. So I'm just going to do a test stream in here and try it out. It is a public group in that people are able to join the group and see the streams within that space, but it's not like you're sending it out to, your customer base or people that you don't really want to see you playing around and testing. So it's a great space to apply. And you can always also test in record only. So just if you're on the newer version of the app, there's a toggle switch at the very top when you first get started, and it lets you choose whether you want to turn on streaming, recording, or what's called a virtual camera. So, turn everything off except for the recording button and then just record a couple of videos. I literally have taken it as a best practice to record a 20-second to up to 2-minute video every single time before I go live. I do it to just make sure that I look good, I sound good. I sometimes I repurpose those videos later because they're kind of bloopery or behind the scenes where I'm like, how do I sound? Oh, drop my light. What am I doing over here? It's as you're playing around, it's just a good way to see what that video looks like and sounds like, and does it have everything that you want it to do. It's a good test, and no one needs to see it but you, unless you are feeling daring or behind the scenes. It's a fun way to get into it, get started.
Yeah, and going back to that comment of like, you can't break it. That's like the best way to learn. Like, I think all of us in our lifetimes have one time or another experience what is called on the job training, right? Which is where you're basically being thrown into the fire and saying, let's see how you figure it out. You understand? And your worst questions will answer. But that's basically the gist of it. And if you take a little bit of that approach to Ecamm, you can learn a lot, because just like we were messing around in the camera effects window,
Mhm.
you're there, just take the slider and see what it does to the most extreme, like go all the way to the right, all the way to the left, and until you let go of the mouse click, it's not even gonna bake in that effect even temporarily, so to speak. So you always have the ability to adjust it, and it's like play around with those sliders and see exactly what they can or can't do for you.
Yeah, I
If
love it.
you
Val says that Paul's her tester. I know, you find a friend.
Yeah.
Paul's your friend. I'm your friend. Louise is here. We're all friends. It's great. Yeah, no, it is nice having kind of a buddy to bounce
and
ideas off of.
if you mess things up totally, and it's like you can't figure anything out, you've got to, you've changed everything, go up, create a brand new profile, and you're back to square zero. And you
Yeah,
can
Make sure that you
you
switch to
can delete the old
broadcast
one. And,
view,
yep.
yeah,
because it starts you all over again. Like everything is from scratch. So the things that I've already done in my previous profiles that is just commonplace for me, absolutely, like that's already set. Starting a new profile is like starting from scratch, and I had to go back and redo all of these things that were just already like ingrained in stone with my previous profiles.
yeah,
Now, on that note, one of the tips I will give you is, as you start going through and say you have a basic set of settings that the way you like that, I would duplicate that profile and give it a name and say, my basic 4K setup or something like that. If you
yeah.
frequently have a setup where you're doing video and you've got everything set up for vertical video,
Hmm.
duplicate that profile and call it my vertical video. So anytime you want to create a new show or something, you take that base profile and you make a copy of it, duplicate it. That way you don't have to go back through and you don't have to change all your settings and get everything set back up again. You've
Hmm.
got the basis for your show. Then from that you can just build your scenes and do all the other stuff, but you don't have to worry about, like Luis was talking about, having to, go back in and make sure that you had broadcast video turned on instead of gas, those types of things. They're all there, and you can
Yeah.
just grow from that.
Yeah, it's nice that you're able to either build from scratch or duplicate so that you really
Yep.
can take control
Yep.
and keep as organized as you. And really, it's so funny when profiles first came out, I was like, nah, I don't know if I'm going to use this very often. I don't do multiple shows. I don't, and now I probably have 40 different profiles saved,
Yep.
for various like projects that I'm working on or shows, or I have one that's, when I'm recording videos, one that is my virtual camera. So anytime I'm doing a meeting, that these are like my meeting settings when I use Ecamm to pop into Zoom or Teams or Meet or any of those different video conferencing tools. So yeah, having that set up, I think profiles is a great starting point. And if you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, what's a profile? A profile is really just an ability to save and to plan out what a particular piece of content is going to look like. So it's sort of similar to like saving folders basically on your computer. It's how Ecamm knows, okay, hey, Luis is jumping on and he's going to do the Flow podcast today. He's going to go down to his Flow profile. That's going to have, all of our names and everything else set in, our theme music, the entire structure of our show will be saved nestled within that profile. So its profile is the top level, and then within profiles you have scenes or scene folders, and then scenes, and then you have overlays, which are everything that you're going to set on top of your video. So we don't actually have any overlays right now. We're just hanging out in side screen. But if we dragged in like a GIF or a logo or any kind of video or image file, you can put that onto your screen and you can resize it or move it around in any way that you want. And this is really how you kind of layer and build what your show or what your video, what your content is going to look like.
Yeah, you can think of it as if you were to look at the profile section, you can think of that as like a neighborhood. And then every profile in there is a house.
Yep.
And then when you enter the house, your scenes are the different rooms in the house, and the
Mhm.
overlays are the furniture and the fixtures and the paintings and everything that you put into the house. So, you can kind of
Yeah.
think of it that way.
Yeah, and the more organized you are, really, the more successful you're going to be, because inevitably you're going to get addicted to this. And when you're playing around later and you're like, everything is just named untitled, or things are just dragged in, it is going to be much more complicated. Because one thing that will happen, that has happened to me often, is I'm just messing around, I'm building out, I do now a couple of different podcasts personally and professionally, and I have like overlays I've thrown in, and then I just hit the little X on the main screen in Ecamm, but that doesn't actually delete it from my overlay panel. It just hides it. And so I have this huge like list of overlays, and if I had named them all correctly, I would have no problem identifying which is which. But because I haven't, I'm just dragging them in and playing around. It wastes a bunch of time that I shouldn't be wasting. So it does matter if you are, if you're doing a lot, or you're really trying to get very efficient with your time. Labeling everything as clearly as possible, naming your files, naming your scenes, naming the profiles is really going to matter. Even if you go back and change the name later, like name it as obviously as you can, so that you don't have to mess around with it.
And if you're working on a show or something like that, and you're going to be making changes, what I suggest is grabbing that profile and dragging it to your desktop. Now you have a backup
Mhm.
of it in case you mess up. You can always go back and make changes to it. And it's the same way with scenes. If you're going to be working on a scene and you not sure if what you're going to do is working, you
Yeah.
can always drag that scene to your desktop. You have a backup of it. You can make changes, and if you totally mess it up and you can't undo enough times to get it back, you can just drag that old scene back in.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually really smart. Or, if you're working collaboratively, that's also a great way to,
Yep.
if Luis is building everything out and Paul is the star of the show, Luis can just build everything all out, be the behind the scenes person, and then just email that file over. And anyone on the other end who has Ecamm can just double click, and, it loads everything into Ecamm, and then they're ready to go. So it's
Yeah.
a great way to work collaboratively, and have a team behind you helping you with what you're doing.
I
Yeah,
was
a
just
little.
gonna mention that the same exact thing about being able to build profiles. And now with the new Ecamm 4.0, you actually have the ability to build the scenes with dedicated camera numbers, so or letters. So I
Mhm.
can put camera A, camera B, or guest 1, 2, 3, and build out all of these scenes within a profile and be able to just email it to somebody, just like Katie said, and they're able to just double click it, Ecamm recognizes the file, opens it up, puts everything in order, and the only thing that they have to do is assign the cameras that they have at their location to camera A, B, C, so on and so forth. So it makes it super easy and convenient to actually be able to share production works and entire setups through profiles.
Mhm.
One caveat on sharing a profile, and I can share this with you from experience. Fulgence was working on some stuff at one time, and he had some scenes, and so he sent me his profile. That profile was huge, but I didn't think too much of it. When you send a profile to somebody, you are sending everything with the exception of fonts and possibly
Yeah.
some videos. So when Fulgence sent that to me, I ended up getting his entire Epidemic Sound library, which he had probably 70 plus
Music
you know
files. Yeah.
music files in there and everything. So be careful with that, because when you send a profile, it's sending everything that's in that profile. So if you don't want your music or some other stuff to go, you may want to pull that out before you or duplicate it and then take out what you don't want to go.
Yeah, that's a great pro tip, and it's worth thinking through what you are sending. And I I actually, now that you said fonts, I just wanted to say here, because we get this question a lot, and I think it's not as intuitive as it could be. So people are always asking, like, where, like, how are you getting cool fonts to be able to use in Ecamm? So Ecamm as a software is just pulling what is in your computer font folder. So again, if if you're the kind of person that plays around with fonts and you've installed a bunch of them, if they are well named and well labeled and in the right spot on your computer, that same structure and format will appear within Ecamm when you are creating any kind of text within Ecamm. So again, kind of having that all set up and the way that you want it on your computer, Ecamm is just going to mimic that through. It's going to be really helpful and a great time saver as you're trying to build out, what you want your, titles to be and how you want your text to show up, especially if you're trying to keep on brand for, your show or your business or your presentation. It goes a really long way. Val wants to know if you gave Fulgence his music back. You're like,
No,
oh, sorry, that's yours. Here you go.
it was great. I ended up with a great collection of music. It's like, oh, I didn't have to do all the research. The other
Yeah.
thing too is, because it's using the fonts from your system, the fonts don't carry forward. So if you're using basic fonts that are on, just standard on the system, those fonts are going to be in that profile or in those scenes when you pass it over to somebody else. If
Mhm.
you're using some special fonts, then you need to make sure, if you're sending that profile to somebody else and they need to be using it, that they have the appropriate fonts. So you need to let them know what fonts it are, or send them a font file with it. But you have to also be careful that some fonts are not, shareable.
Yeah.
They're copyrighted. So, be careful of that. But fonts do not come across. So
Yeah.
if you've done really fancy stuff and you send it to somebody, it may not look the same on the other end if they don't have the right fonts.
Yes, all important
Surprise.
things. And there are a lot of copyright things to keep in mind as you are getting into the world of video and live streaming. And you really need to be thinking through, if you're using Ecamm to go out to another app like Zoom and you're in a closed meeting, by all means, feel free to throw any of those video clips and sound effects and images and all kinds of things to really make your meeting like as fun and dynamic and interesting as possible. If you're live streaming and it's going out to one of those platforms, you need to be really careful about what is copyrighted versus what you own. And that includes a lot of things. That includes, fonts that you should have permission to be able to use fonts that are, that are copyrighted, that have permission. Music, like we were just saying, many of us use a tool called Epidemic Sound, which provides us with permission to use a lot of music within their library. But if I didn't have Epidemic Sound and Fulgence sent over all of his files to me, if I played them, I would be running the risk of, and likely would be caught, in trouble for having non-copyrighted music. I wouldn't have permission to use that on my streams. So it's just really, and video clips are the same way. Just make sure that you have permission to do what you're trying to do, because Ecamm, it will help you create just about anything that you can think of, but we are not there when you are breaking rules and running amok of what is dictated by the space that you're in.
Yeah, you may spend a lot of time working out either a live stream or maybe a recorded video, and you've got music and you've got transitions and all this great stuff, and you post it to YouTube, and then you get a message from somebody saying that there's no sound, and you go back in and looking. YouTube has cut the sound for your entire video because of the fact that you have copyrighted music, and you have a choice of either fixing the music or taking the whole thing down. So be careful.
Yeah. Oh, this is a good question. This is coming through for Luis, which I'm so thrilled Luis is here because these kinds of questions always come up and I can't answer them. So, Luis, Michael's in the market for a new MacBook Pro. How many gigs? Is 32 gigs enough for Ecamm and DaVinci Resolve, or up to the 64 gig?
That really depends on the length of the videos that you're going to be editing. So
Mm,
if you're mostly dealing with 10, 15, maybe even 20-minute video lengths, as that's your length of export file, then I really think the 32 gig should be enough if that's within your budget. But if you're going to be now editing files that are hour long and reaching anything within that range or maybe even longer, then I highly recommend going for the 64 gigabytes, because the extra space on the MacBook systems having the new integrated memory onto the chip, or how they call it, the SoC, the system on a chip,
mhm.
having that integration, you can't upgrade later on. So I would highly recommend to get as much RAM, even over the size of your hard drive. So if
Mm,
you're up in the air of saying, should I go 2 terabytes or 64 gigs, go the 64 gigabyte route, because it's something that you can't add on in the future. And external hard drives are getting even faster with these new Thunderbolt 4 connections that are transferring data at 40 gigabytes a second. That's not going to be your limitation coming into the future. So, but now when it comes to Ecamm, Ecamm will run fine on even the 16 gigabyte,
yeah.
system. The only time that you'll be looking at, looking for more memory with Ecamm has to do with your capacity for getting on guests, so to speak, and making sure that you have enough computer bandwidth or memory accolation or space available so that you could have the room to host multiple guests on your stream. But besides that, Ecamm is an amazing program that doesn't consume a lot of memory when it comes to the production. A lot of it has to do with the processor itself. That's why we also recommend the new uh, Apple Silicon,
Yeah.
machines, because they have increased the productivity of these machines by leaps and bounds, that now gives us the ability, or said us, but Ken and Glenn, the ability to program, ISO video recording,
Yep.
ISO audio recording, all the bells and whistles, interview mode, and the list goes on, all available through the M1 platform.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always tell people to, if you can afford it, go bigger. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be great for today, but just like Ecamm's always been working on Intel Macs and all this other stuff. When 4.0 came out, it still works on an Intel Mac. But if you want to take advantage of some of the new features, you have to have the M1 silicon. It's going to continue to evolve and going to continue to grow. And you don't want to end up, having a 16, memory and find out, that you really now need 32, and the only option you have is to trade it in. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, there are, just so everyone is aware, so in with the latest release, so version 4.0 or newer, there are two features that do require the use of the Apple Silicon chip. So you need that M1 or M2 computer in order to run 10 guests. So you can do four guests, up to four guests on the Intel Macs, no problem. But if you want to go up to 10, you would just need the power of the newer computers, unfortunately. And the same goes for that isolated video files, which is a little bit of a complicated feature to explain to people if it's not something that you've done before. But basically, what that's doing is it is simultaneously recording each independent video. So, Luis is driving the show right now. If his isolated video hadn't turned off in the middle of this broadcast, what it would do in the end is it would have this video file, so showing, the three of us side by side and everything that we brought on screen and how we produced the show in one video file. But it would also have Paul's file just by itself, clean, no graphics on it, not me or Luis in the shot. Same for mine, same for Luis. If Luis had multiple cameras connected, each of those video files would save down as well. And so if you think about that, that is, Ecamm is using the power within your Mac computer to not only send the broadcast out where it's going, but to record so many very high quality videos onto your computer. So it wasn't something that was possible on the Intel computers, unfortunately. With the release of Apple Silicon, it just made it a possibility for us to be able to add that feature. And so that's why it's restricted. So yeah, it's worth thinking about. I mean, it's amazing how accessible video production and streaming has gotten over the last, 5 to 10 years, and even a little bit beyond that. And I think because of that, some of us forget and are like, oh, it's totally fine to be doing this on older machines. It'll work. But, but you're asking a lot of those machines for what we're trying to accomplish. What we're pulling off even right now in like the most simple, least done show that we normally do. We have no graphics on. We're not doing any crazy background music or rolling video clips or bringing in 10-ish guests and rotating all out. Even this simple production back years ago would have cost, an insane amount of money to produce, and you could have only done it in a television studio. And so I think we forget that sometimes. And as you're considering new computers, it's definitely worth, thinking about that. Is I totally get everyone has different budgets, but these computers do hold value for a long time. So sometimes it's hard to remember that they are older than you think they are. Even mine, I'm like, oh, we're getting up to it now where it's a couple of years old, and you've got to be thinking that through. So always an important thing to keep in mind. But yeah, only 2 features right now. So if you're like, oh shoot, I have an Intel computer, it's okay. You're just not quite there yet for using those features to the level that we would want you to have them at. So yeah, you'll get there. You can still do a ton with the software, even on an Intel computer. And there's some amazing ones still out there in the market.
Now, before we move on, I just want to add this to it, because it's not all about, having interview guests for the isolated video, because as a solo content creator myself, I have multiple cameras. And what we try to do is that we try to get a secondary angle that helps us with our editing, so that if there is a jump cut that's necessary, that's very jarring, you could actually just jump to the other camera and make it seem very purposeful. And that's when you would have, whether it's film or video recording, the little, clap machine, so to speak, like that. That's actually just the same way that they would tell you to clap before a video recording, so that even though you have 2 cameras recording separately, you can then synchronize them and time them correctly with the spike in the audio with that clap. None of that is needed anymore with the new isolated video with Ecamm. And that's one of the things that I love, that you don't have to worry about that. You have 2 cameras set up, and as soon as you press record, you're recording both of them at the same time. You have the ability to send the primary microphone to both of the cameras, or you could individualize the microphone, so that, let's say you had a backup microphone for scratch audio, you would have that one being sent to the secondary recording as well. But as soon as you stop recording and the files are done, they're all timed, or they all have the same exact amount of time within the file. So when you go into your post editing, you don't have to worry about synchronizing the times. Just as long as they're all lined up straight at the beginning, everything else is going to be perfectly in sync, because it's all done ahead of time. So that is one of my favorite features for having, a multi-camera shoot, and only having to record once, saying like, if you messed up on saying something like I did when I said accolade when I was supposed to say allocate, right? I would be able to actually, adjust that in post and switch it around, because I have this secondary angle just by repeating myself and moving on.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I love it. And Paul's already answering questions in the chat. I love it. So Val wants to know what camera, mic, and headphones we're all using. What about you, Luis? What are you using?
Oh, I'm using the Sony A6100 as my camera. I am using the Shure SM7B on my microphone. My Rodecaster Pro is a little hurt, so I am bringing the audio through the Zoom PodTrack P4. And the headphones are the generic ones that we get from Amazon, the $20 PZ.
Linsole. Oh, is that
Yeah,
you have the same one as me? The Linsoles. Yeah.
actually, I
I
think those are better. These
Oh,
I need to get
like in the
some of
lower
those.
level.
So my
Okay.
recommendation will be get the ones that Katie has because they're in my basket on Amazon. Like they're about
Oh.
to be sent over.
Yeah. I'm the same as Paul. I'm using a Sony ZV-E10 here. I'm actually slowly building out my home studio. I just moved, so it's right now it's a messy craft room, but I'm getting there. I've been playing with light. It's kind of comical the amount of lights that I have
Here's a
around here.
question. Here's a question because everyone always asks about the cameras, right? But as a camera
Mhm.
junkie, I also know the importance of the lens. So even though we
Mm.
have Sony cameras, what lens are we all using?
I think I'm just on the kit lens because I'm pretty sure that the Sigma that
Nice.
we bought is still in the office. Yeah, I think this is just the kit lens that came with it.
See, Paul?
I think I'm on the the Sigma 16 millimeter,
Hmm.
if I
Like
remember
me.
correct.
So I also have
Mhm.
the Sigma 16, and that's the whole thing. I know Katie uses it for the office, so I didn't know if she literally just snatched that camera. But it's one of the sayings that I always have.
Yeah.
The optics are more important than the camera body. So
Very
if you have a bad lens on a good camera, your images are not going to be great. But if
true.
you get a great lens on a mediocre camera, you're going to get amazing results because the lens is doing all of the work of the sharpness, the clarity, the focusing, and the majority of the weight that's being pulled is on the lens. So
Yeah, and I would say I think I'm just like looking at it. I think you two still are like a crisper, nicer, and I might just be too bright with all my lights. I'm playing around with way too
no,
much
that
here.
that has to
But
do with the little
yeah,
bit of extraness because the difference between the kit lens and it's not that it's bad, but it's still a zoom lens. So
yeah,
whenever you have optics that are
yeah,
changing
and
for
I'm
different focal lengths, it's not as sharp as what it's called the prime lens, which is a single
mm.
focal length, and it's basically like we've all heard that meme like you had one job, right? So these lenses are designed to just have one job and
Have
do it
one job.
well.
And I'm just trying to see if I am actually zoomed in. So here's me zoomed out. I was zoomed in through Ecamm, and I probably Luis has me zoomed in a little bit too.
Oh,
But
but you see that actually added a lot of sharpness to it.
oh, there you go. So see, yeah, messing around with it. And this is hard for me as an individual because I'm a total perfectionist, but I've been just forcing myself to do like I've just been saying yes to all podcast interviews and video interviews and whatever else. And I've been trying to do them at home. And I'm like, it's not perfect. Like I said, I haven't like finished painting or cleaning up this space and it's filled with all kinds of craft stuff and kid stuff and whatever. But I'm like, it forces me a little bit every night to come up here and move things around. So I've just been like, okay, that's not quite the right place for this. Or, oh, actually, I just grabbed these two things from the office and that's not, the right light that I want long term. And so it's making me think I have lots of gear because I'm lucky enough to have a job where there's tons of offices with lots of gear, but it's trying to find the right gear that makes sense for what I'm trying to accomplish in this size space. So it's a worthy practice for everyone to do and just sort of force yourself to be like, nope, that's not the right place to put the camera. Nope, that's not, I need to move it this way a little bit. I think it goes a really long way. And I'm as everyone that is constantly talking to me, I'm with a Shure MV7 and I stole this one from the office because I love it so very much. I was like, nope, I can just hang on to this one. I need a new color though. I still have the orange.
But right now
And
you're using it USB, right?
It is. I am using it USB, yeah, because we only have one Roadcaster at the moment, and I didn't want to mess with taking that home. So, and I don't have a lot of space on my
Exactly.
desk, so it probably doesn't make sense for me. And I'm not doing a lot. I'm not doing nearly as much kind of audio editing or mixing, but Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds great, and that's the whole thing. When you get a quality microphone capsule, a Shure MV7, whether you're using it USB or XLR, you're gonna get a good signal to start with. So it's kind of falls into the same realm as that lens, right? You have
Yep.
one job, so having it do the one job and do it well, you can get really good quality audio from a simple or not well, simple, yes, but not basic. It's a simple USB microphone, but that Shure MV7 really is a rock star.
Yeah, and I just got so, like, Paul has his I was, like, sad and jealous of Paul's awesome lights. Maybe I'll get that. I have a wood wall behind me, so I have to figure out something, but I did on Doc's recommendation, I'll blind you all here. I got these, like, lightsaber lights,
Nice.
the Nan Light Pavo tubes. These are it says Pavo Tube
Hmm.
2 6C. I got 2 of them, and I bought the little stands. So they're awesome
Yep.
because they're a great size for we have the big ones in the office that are just on the floor providing colored light, but this is great because I was like, oh, I need like a little bit more light in front of me, and I was like, I don't know what I have. And so yeah, they're nice. They're magnetic, so you can really attach them to. You're amazed at how much magnet stuff for metal that you can attach them to in any space. But I have one behind me that's putting color on my white door, which you can kind of see in this shot and kind of not. Um, so yeah, I think, thinking it through, and these were way cheaper than what I was initially looking at, but they're portable. So it's really easy for when I'm on the road and want to take them to different places or doing different things. So
Yep.
yeah, think it through. Gear is one of those things we all think we need the most of. And I think it more and more, I'm like, nope, you need the right stuff for for the
Yes.
right job.
Because everyone talks about these MacBook Pros and having them portable, but that 16-inch MacBook Pro, the thing's a tank. That
Yeah.
thing is big. And when you start talking about an extra 5 pounds in your sack on your back, then you
Hmm.
start adding lights and a camera, and you're like, this is my mobile setup, but it needs wheels. That's like not that mobile, right? So,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I I have put all of that, and for example, I went to Orlando not too long ago, and I didn't want to miss out on my weekly live stream, so I still went live, and I took
Mhm.
my Sony ZV-1F, right,
Mm,
the camera, and
yep.
that camera connects with one USB-C cable directly to a simple little MacBook Air. And because
Hmm.
I did a one camera and believe it or not, no microphone setup, because I used the microphone that's built into the ZV-1F as my
Nice.
microphone as the upgrade to the one on the MacBook Air. And just with the one camera and one cable, I was able to do my live stream from Orlando. And it wasn't the best, but it definitely wasn't the worst. It was very much in what we call the good enough
Good enough
category.
space. Yeah.
Yes, the good enough space, especially for something so minimal. And like I said, it was just one of the simplest and inexpensive cameras that you can find right
Mhm.
now. And the MacBook Air, which is the lightest, smallest MacBook that you can find. So
Yep.
one in
Yeah.
one, and I was done.
Somebody also mentioned in the comments about it was Dean about the MV7 and the noise, and
Mm.
both uh, Luis and I use an application called Crisp because
Mhm.
I live right outside my window, which is I can touch it practically, is an alley where garbage trucks come through and all this other stuff. And I live in downtown Palo Alto, very close to Stanford University and Stanford Hospital. So there's sirens constantly
Oh,
going
you're
on
like
around here.
Amesbury, constant. At least
Yes.
yours have a reason. Mine go by all the time, and I'm like, "Where are you going to?"
But so,
Oh, yeah.
and that gets rid of all that sound. Even in the summertime when my air conditioner is running in the room, you don't hear it. So
Yeah.
it actually, I always tell the story. I was doing a stream one time and the fire alarm or the smoke detector, actually it was the fire alarm in the building, went off. I heard it. Nobody else did. And it's like, I got
Awesome.
to leave. The fire alarm's going off, and they're going, we don't hear anything. It's like,
They're like, "What?"
Well, just to
Yeah.
just to add to that, yes, I absolutely been using that program, Crisp. Right now, my air conditioning is on. On top of that, I
rub it
have
in.
cartoons playing. Well, I'm in Miami, so we're not
Bad
experiencing
life.
any other
Yeah.
type of weather except hot. But I have Aiden, my son, who's with me. He's playing with his toys and he's making all the kid noises that you could imagine. and I got cartoons on to entertain him. You understand? Just so that I could do this
Mhm.
broadcast without having to like constantly worry about my child. So doing all of that with the power of Crisp, you only hear me, and
Mhm.
I've been using it for a while. So yes, Paul knows. As soon as I
Yeah.
found this program, I was like, this has been the heaven sent. This is what I've been looking for, and I've been using Crisp Audio for months now.
Yeah,
Yep.
I have it as well. I don't actually have it turned on right now because I kinda came up here quickly,
I
but I
could
do have
turn
it.
mine off, right? Like so that you could hear the mess real quick. Let me see here. Let me see if I can get the okay. Here we go. Let's see. I'm gonna turn the noise cancellation off real quick.
Oh, wow, look at that. Yeah.
All that's going on right now, constantly,
Crisp.
and that's because Aiden's quiet.
K-R-I-S-P.
And then
K-R-I-S-P, friend.
here we're gonna turn it on.
Wow. That is pretty
It's
crazy.
it is, and that's the best example that I can give to anyone. I'm like, I absolutely use it. And that's like I said, Aiden wasn't even making noise at that moment. When he gets on it and it's loud, boy, you could definitely hear it. So, and it's not
Yeah.
so much about my audience, right? Like my camera junkie crew that is on my live streams. Like they understand my situation and they know Aiden is gonna be there. But we also talk about barking dogs and planes
Mhm.
flying overhead, like in my house right now. All these things that you really don't have control over that
Yeah, that can be
not
distractions.
it's not even so much distracting to the audience, it's distracting to the person, the host, so to speak. So
Mhm.
those are things that will take me out of it because I'm thinking or overthinking my production side, right, and what could be happening. But having something that simple to know that I can look at my audio meter and know that only my voice is going to come through, that's why I use it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
It
Oh my
also has a
goodness.
neat thing that I didn't realize. It will listen to your voice and it comes back and it tells you how many filler words that if you used X number of filler words in your discussion.
Oh, no, it's got a
Really?
script level where you're like, "Oh, shoot." I'm saying those things.
You see,
Yeah,
I do this. I'm gonna take full ownership on this. Like I find something and it works, and then I just like leave it alone, right?
same.
And I don't because I'm like it's doing that one job and it's doing it well, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I don't start looking more, trying to figure out how to, like how to get more out of it, which I should,
Yeah.
right? But sometimes like you're doing the one thing, do it well, go.
This
Yep.
is this is really good advice though, because I'm sure that there's a couple people. I see all of our usual crew, but I'm sure that there's a couple of people who are new and they're probably just sitting here hiding in the comments. And Ecamm is also a software that you really like. I cannot say this enough. It does probably too much. It probably does too much, everyone. So
Yep.
you need to start as simple as possible. Like literally just start doing something as simple as we're doing right here,
Yep.
where it's just don't like maybe put one graphic on and just test it out and see what happens and then take the next step. And that, and we have lots of training and resources in our community, on our YouTube channel, support.ecamm.com, learn.ecamm.com, videos.ecamm.com. All these different spaces have all kinds of helpful information, but it can feel like a lot when there's a lot of windows, and we've just talked about all like these, additional software and additional things that you can do. If you're just like, I just want to know how to go live, or I just want to record a video, just turn everything else off, close all the other, windows in Ecamm, and just focus on the one thing that you want to do, get really good at that, and then go to the next thing. Because it really can be very somewhat distracting when you see all of the things that's possible. You can get your mind a little bit a little bit
Yeah.
crazy trying to figure it all out. So start as
We
simple as possible.
we talk
Hmm.
about gear acquisition syndrome, and it's like when you're first starting out, start with what you have. Get used to what you have, see what you can do, see what else is out there, what other people are doing, and then over time make the decision to start upgrading your gear as you
Mhm.
understand what that gear is going to provide you, because it's very easy to get in here, start seeing, oh, this person has this kind of camera and this person has this kind of lights, and you start buying stuff and then you realize, oh, that really doesn't work out for me. So now
Yeah.
you have all this, you have this gear that doesn't work for you, and now you're buying more gear, and then you're trying to figure out, do I sell this? What do I do with all, and it's like, don't spend that money.
Yeah.
Learn as you go and see what's out there, and make sure that that's going to work for what you're trying to do. Because
Yeah.
just because I have this camera and this lens doesn't mean that particular lens is going to work in your environment.
Mhm.
I
So
think the
be
hardest
careful.
thing to do is to try to sell gear that didn't work for you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how,
You're like,
I
I didn't
find,
like this. You wanna buy
hey, I'm selling this. And like, why are you selling it? And then inside of you, like, because it's a piece of junk, right? Or like, however you want to say it, like, it absolutely did not work for me, right? But you're trying to sell it to recoup. And that's like the hardest thing for me, comparative to actually getting something and be like, hey, I've used it for years. I like, it's actually working perfect. And the only reason why I'm selling it is because it's sitting on my shelf and I want someone to get use out of it, because I did upgrade to the new M2 Mac, and now I have that one, and my previous computer is working perfectly fine, is just catching dust now. So
Yep.
that's what I'm saying. So always try to be wary of that, gear acquisition syndrome. And that's why I always say upgrade your skills before your gear.
Yeah.
Because there's always a level where you want to upgrade your gear, but always know that your skill level needs to exceed your gear level.
Yeah, and there's
fifty
nothing worse
thousand
than
dollars
selling a piece of equipment and then seeing, a video of someone who's using that equipment and looks fantastic. Like, it might be that you think it's a it's terrible piece of equipment because you don't know how to use it properly, or because
Yep.
you haven't spent the time. I'm super guilty of that. It's, I get it. It's doing the one thing that, I think it does okay, and then I'm like, oh, I need this other different thing I saw from someone else, when really my camera does that. I just haven't spent the time to realize how to do it or how to set it up. So yeah, really, Diana Glady does this so well, and says this all the time, is to, really spend a good couple of weeks, like, going slowly, step by step through your gear and really understanding what it's capable of doing before you think about making any kind of changes or before adding anything else on, because
Yep.
chances are it might do what you want it to do. You just haven't got to that page of the book yet. Or you haven't,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
haven't
Exactly.
figured out that setting yet.
And another
Yeah.
thing
If
is
you're
to
not going to take
actually
the
know what you need out of your production,
Yep.
because then you'll
Yep.
know if your equipment could actually do what it needs to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that piece of gear that you spent, X $100 on or whatever is not going to do you any good if you're not going to take the time to understand how it works. Because
Yeah.
you can have a $6,000 camera, and if you don't know how to operate it, you're not going to look any better than you do now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Probably
absolutely. All right.
worse.
I know we're nearing the end here, and I need to bounce a bit soon, but I want to make sure that we don't
Mhm.
miss any questions. And I think so. Paul wanted to know about where Chris was, what the link was, but other Paul got you, so we're good there.
Yes.
Just
Thank you,
going
Paul.
through. Dean has a good question, and I actually don't know the answer to this one. When it comes to using Crisp, how does Crisp connect into the Roadcaster, or do they not connect through to the
No, I could
Roadcaster?
explain that real quick. Crisp is actually like a standalone program that now is working on your Mac computer.
I
So
got it.
Crisp can be utilized as your middleman, or your protection of letting noise out onto the world on any microphone. So as soon as you
Awesome.
have it installed, it's actually here. I'm going to go back into the live demo mode to show everyone here. As soon as I click Crisp, this window pops up. So let's move my program window over there. All right. As soon as I click Crisp, it's up here in
Mhm.
my as a widget,
Mhm.
basically right in my taskbar, right on the top. So as you can see, as I speak, you'll see the levels move, but what's selected there is the Zoom P4 audio, which is my audio interface.
Mhm. So it
So
could be the Rodecaster Pro in
it
that
could be
case,
the
if that, yeah.
Rodecaster Pro. It
Mhm.
could be whatever microphone. So in Katie's situation, if she were to be using it, she's not using the Rodecaster Pro. She's not using the PodTrack P4. She's using her USB microphone. So she would
Mhm.
go into that little icon there and select her current microphone to be monitored by Crisp. So
Mhm.
then when she goes into Ecamm, as you see here, my main microphone is my Crisp microphone,
Yeah, that's
not my
actually an important thing. Yeah, so change in Ecamm to be Crisp as your
because that's
microphone,
what's
not
gonna
Yep.
for
take the
sure
audio
your
out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Roadcaster, etc. Yep.
So that's the
Awesome.
protection there. So whichever microphone I decide to set as my crisp microphone, Ecamm is then going to start receiving the cleaned up audio from the crisp program
Mhm.
with whatever microphone I desire to use that instant. So
Yeah.
that's how it basically works. So if you're using, unfortunately, sometimes it happens to all of us, we're using the onboard microphone
Mhm.
of the laptop. You can still set your onboard internal microphone to crisp and then have that clean up whatever noise it could be. So I saw that Glenda had mentioned that she was doing live streams at the beach,
Yeah.
noisy areas and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I would highly recommend using Crisp because Crisp's algorithm or its system is so good that it removes music in real time. So
That's
if you
Yep.
were to
awesome.
play a song, Crisp will not let it through because it recognizes that it's music, and maybe a word or two of the song will come through as just spoken word, no music whatsoever. So for us content creators, we kind of live in a world of silence where we create everything without music because we know that we have to add our copyrighted free
Yeah.
music
Exactly. Yeah.
afterwards. And
Uh,
if you're in a public environment like the beach where you do not have control over that, where people could just be rolling by, with music blasting on a radio or anything like that, is
Yeah.
why I recommend using this tool for anything of that sort because it's going to actively remove any copyright written music in real time, and you will only hear your voice. Like you can't hear my air conditioning and everything like that in a live real world environment.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
And
Well,
we're
now
not
we've sold everyone
sponsored,
on
but
Crisp. Yeah, I was gonna say we are not sponsored by Crisp, but it did solve a problem. We've had we still haven't finished doing soundproofing in our test studio space, so it definitely is helpful there because it's a really big open space with lots of windows and lots of areas where the sound can bounce right back at us. So it's been helpful throughout that, but I can't believe we another hour flew
Mhm.
by. I
Yep.
don't think we did really a great job of demoing anything, but we answered lots of questions and we talked in detail about the software and about a lot of the high level stuff, which I actually think is important because I feel like sometimes we miss that as we get into the nitty gritty of all of the features. So if you're sitting here and you still have questions about features, again, if you go to videos.ecamm.com or here on our YouTube channel, there are so many amazing tutorials that will walk you through each specific feature, each specific use case with an Ecamm. But a lot of it comes down to pushing the buttons and testing and practicing and asking lots of questions and figuring out what it is you want to create and just taking it step by step to get from the beginning all the way through. So yay for new Crisp fans. Katie's like, great info. Everyone will be on board for Crisp. They'll be like, what happened today? We sold a whole bunch of copies of Crisp.
well,
But yeah, I mean, audio matters. So having,
Yep.
more than your video feed, people
I
really need to
always
be able
say
to hear
that.
you.
Yeah, I always say that as a camera junkie, it hurts me to say that audio is first in any video. It hurts, but it's the truth because bad audio is unwatchable.
Yeah, it
Yep.
really is. So yeah, if
Yes.
you're gonna upgrade something first, this is definitely the way to go. And again, Crisp is not expensive. So if you don't have the best mic and you haven't gotten around to spending money on soundproofing, these are the kinds of things that go a long way. So it's a journey and it's a couple of steps at a time, right? So this is a good maybe
And it's
middle level step.
portable. Not to go
Mhm.
back
Yes.
to it, but it's portable because
Yeah,
I mentioned before that I did my live stream from Orlando, and the
yeah.
reason why I trusted the microphone on the ZV-1F was because I knew that Chris was helping me out.
Carrying the weight. Yeah, exactly.
Well, then you
Exactly.
don't have to spend, you can get away with not having to spend money on,
Yeah.
sound fixture or, putting sound stuff off. Because, like in my apartment, I have no way that I could put up soundproofing stuff.
Yeah.
So Chris takes care of that for me. It's
Yeah,
like I can
definitely.
spend that money on something else.
Mhm. Exactly.
Cameras,
Exactly. Cameras, yeah, more cameras.
more lenses.
Well, happy Friday, Luis and Paul. Thanks so much for hanging out with me
It was a
and
Thank
lot of
you.
fun. So thank you
and
for
to
having me.
Doc, who's at his pretend dentist appointment, have his safe dentist appointment, and to everyone hanging out in the chat. If you are Ecamm fan, which I know many of you are, Adrian's running his Ecamm Live Academy. It starts in not next week, but the week after. So if you want to learn more about that, there's a video here on yeah, I think we have a video on our YouTube channel. There's definitely a lot of videos on his channel, but you can go to adriansalisbury.com/Ecamm Live Academy with little hyphens in between live Ecamm and live. But that will take you over to learn more about that. That's a really hands-on training on everything you need to know about Ecamm in a really safe, friendly environment. So if you're just new and you want to get started, that's a great resource. The timing is awesome because it's just about to reopen again. And then we have lots of other challenges coming up too on the heels of that. So we have Ecamm Advanced, and then a couple of design challenges coming up too. So lots happening in the world of Ecamm, but hopefully everyone has a great, amazing weekend, and we'll see you again next week.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Oh, where's my mouse?
Push the button. Push the
There we
button.
go. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.